I'm Hannah Whitlow, 34 years old, and 2 weeks before my mother's birthday, I got a text that read, "You're not coming. You don't photograph well next to Ellie." I read it twice. No apology, no explanation. Just a quiet dismissal dressed up as preference. They didn't know I signed Ellie's paycheck. Didn't know I'd been quietly paying my parents' power, water, and internet for over 2 years. All they knew was what they saw, and apparently, I didn't look good enough to be seen. Before I go any further, let me know where you're listening from in the comments, and hit that like and subscribe button if you've ever been pushed aside by the people you tried hardest to help. I live alone now, Portland, Oregon. It's not lonely, not in the way people assume. I run a digital media company that focuses on stories by and about women, real ones. We're small but steady. Some weeks we're prepping interviews with state senators. Other weeks I'm reviewing resumes for first-time interns. My title's executive director, but to my family I might as well be folding greeting cards for a hobby. They've never asked what I do, not once. If I tried to bring it up at a family dinner, the topic changed. Or someone reached for the mashed potatoes. The only time I ever got a call was when something broke. A login issue, a car that wouldn't start a refund that didn't show up. Then suddenly I was useful again. Growing up, that's how it always was. My brother Ryan was the favorite. Homecoming Crown College scholarships, the framed photos in every hallway. My mom used to say, "He's the one we're all proud of," and then she'd look at me with a smile that never reached her eyes and say, "Hannah's the quiet one. She's good, she helps." So I helped. I clapped at every ceremony, sat at the edge of group pictures, let him shine. I even wrote his first job application cover letter back when he couldn't find the words himself. 2 years ago, my mother called sounding rattled. Dad was on medical leave, their utility bills had spiked, and she whispered, "Just until next month, if you could help even a little." I didn't ask questions. I covered the power bill. The next month it was the water. After that, their Wi-Fi. I set the payments to go out automatically first of the month every month. No one ever brought it up again, not even a thank you. I convinced myself it didn't matter, that I wasn't doing it for recognition. But then came the call. Not a real conversation, just a tone shift in the middle of logistics. "Hannah, with Ryan bringing Ellie this year? We were thinking maybe it's best you sit this one out, just for this birthday. It's not personal." I didn't say anything right away. Then she added, almost like a disclaimer, "She just fits better. Next to Ryan in pictures. You two are different energies." I sat there holding my phone like it might apologize if I waited long enough. Ellie. The same Ellie I had personally approved for a 6-month internship at our office 3 months earlier. Harvard grad. Quiet resume. Nice enough. We'd shaken hands twice. She had no idea I had a brother, and my family had no idea she worked for me. But they'd decided I wasn't presentable enough to be in their frame. That was the moment something in me, something old and tired, stood still. And the quiet that followed didn't feel like surrender. It felt like something else. I didn't tell anyone what I did the night after that call. I didn't cry or pace or rehearse what I would say next time I saw them. I just sat at the kitchen counter, opened my laptop, and canceled 3 auto payments: electricity, water, and internet. The payments had been running for so long, I'd almost forgotten they were mine. It took less than a minute to stop them. The next morning, I made coffee like usual. Portland was quiet, damp, and gray, the way it usually is in early spring. I stood by the window with my mug and watched the light fade through the clouds. Then I opened my banking dashboard again and scrolled back. Month by month, bill after bill. The numbers didn't mean much at first, just transactions. But when I added them up, 24 payments in total, it came out to $6,782.34. I sat with that for a while. None of them had ever asked. Not once. Not even a text to say thank you. When the first payment went through, Mom had called the next day to say the lights were back on. I thought that was enough. That doing what needed to be done quietly and without asking for attention was what being a good daughter looked like. They never asked where the money came from, how my work was going, or what my days looked like. They didn't know I'd started hiring a second team to manage overflow, or that we'd just hit a milestone on a major campaign with a nonprofit in D.C. No one ever visited. They didn't ask if I had someone in my life. I could have moved across the country or gone off the grid, and it might have taken months for anyone to notice. When I was younger, I thought that was normal. That being helpful was the same as being loved. A few days before the party, my brother Ryan posted a picture of his breakfast in the family group chat. Just a smoothie in a glass bowl, a few pieces of fruit on top. The thread blew up. Mom sent heart emojis. Dad replied with, "Looks delicious." And Aunt Carol said, "That's my boy." That was the most anyone had said in that chat all week. I didn't respond. I don't think they even noticed. I kept going with my work like nothing had happened. I led 3 meetings that week, gave feedback on a campaign pitch, reviewed 2 new intern portfolios. I even approved Ellie's final assignment before her rotation ended. She had no idea I was related to Ryan. I never mentioned him and she'd never asked. But the timing of her arrival at the party and my removal settled into my chest like a cold weight. I hadn't been home in almost 2 years. Not for Thanksgiving, not for Christmas, not when Dad had a small surgery last spring. I'd sent flowers to the hospital and followed up with the nurse afterward, but no one ever called me, and I stopped calling back. There wasn't a fight, just a slow drift. Every call grew shorter, every conversation more surface level. I would ask how things were, and they'd say, "Same old," then change the topic. They never asked how I was doing, not even once. The day of the party came without fanfare. It was a Saturday. I didn't have it marked on the calendar, but I knew what day it was. I knew the timing of it, when guests would be arriving, when the first photos would be taken, when the cake would come out. My body remembered even if I didn't want it to. At 4:37 p.m., my phone lit up. Mom incoming call. I let it ring. A minute later, Ryan incoming call. I didn't answer. Then came a number I didn't recognize. I had a feeling I knew who it was. I turned the phone over on the counter and left it face down. At 4:49, the first text came in. "Mom Hannah, the power just shut off. We have people here. Can you fix this?" I read it once. Then again. "Ryan Water's out too. What's going on?" Then finally Ellie. "Hi, Ms. Whitlow. I think the internet's down. I can't get the slideshow to load and everyone's waiting." That one made me pause. Not because I was angry, just because I could still see her email signature in my mind. Editorial intern spring cohort. She had no idea who I was to them, but she was about to find out. I made a cup of tea and sat with the messages for a while. Then I typed one response. "Me. Sorry. I'm no longer handling household support." I left it at that. No explanation, no elaboration, just the truth. They had relied on me like clockwork. My name never came up unless something broke. I had made sure the lights stayed on, the bills got paid, the Wi-Fi stayed connected. I had covered all the pieces that made their lives run quietly in the background. But I had been erased from the picture they wanted to show the world. This time, the background stepped away, and everything stopped working. By 5:20 p.m., the texts were coming faster. "Mom, please, this is serious. Ryan, you're being unreasonable. People are starting to ask questions. Dad, we need electricity. People are noticing." I didn't reply. For once, they weren't ignoring me. They were relying on me. Not to be agreeable, not to fade into the corner, not to smile in the background of a group photo. They were relying on me to fix it, and I wasn't going to. At 5:31, a video call came in from Aunt Mary Ann. She was the only one who ever really looked me in the eye at family gatherings. I hadn't seen her in a while. Her name came up on the screen and I hesitated. Then I answered. She appeared in the kitchen I grew up in. The lights were dim voices in the background, conversations quiet but hurried. I saw Ryan pacing behind her, my mother whispering to someone off camera. Aunt Mary Ann looked unsure. "Hannah," she said gently, "aren't you going to help them?" I didn't answer right away. I just listened. "Your mom's upset. Your dad's fuming. People are asking what happened. Ellie's trying to keep things calm, but—" She trailed off. Her eyes moved to something off-screen. Then came a voice. Clear professional. "I'm sorry to interrupt." Ellie stepped into view. Her hair was done. Her dress was pristine, her posture perfect. She turned toward the camera and stopped. Her eyes landed on me. There was a pause, 3 full seconds of silence. Then she said softly, "Oh, hi, Miss Whitlow." She blinked, then quickly added, "I mean Hannah. Sorry, I didn't mean—" Behind her, Ryan's voice cut in. "Wait, what did you just call her?" Ellie turned flustered. "Nothing. It's just at work You work with her?" he asked, his voice rising. Ellie looked at me, then back at Ryan. "She's my manager at Pacific W." The room went still. My mom stepped into view. My dad followed. "She's your boss," Ryan said again, quieter this time. "Hannah. Our Hannah." Ellie nodded. "Yes. I didn't know. I didn't know she was your sister." No one moved. No one spoke. Then Ellie said, almost under her breath, "If I had known, I wouldn't have come." She walked off screen. No one asked her to stay. I watched them. They didn't speak. Just stood there in the dim kitchen, letting the truth settle over everything. I didn't explain. I didn't gloat. I just ended the call. After the call ended, I didn't say much. I closed the laptop, let the screen go black, and sat still for a long time. There wasn't anything to respond to. No one had asked me a real question. No one had looked at me directly until Ellie slipped up and said the truth out loud. The messages kept coming in for the next 2 hours. My phone buzzed on and off with new texts, new missed calls. At one point, Ryan left a voicemail. I didn't listen to it. I just let the sound pass through the room like background noise. After a while, the screen went quiet. That night, I made dinner the way I always do. Roasted vegetables, some rice, a bit of fish. I didn't eat with the TV on or music playing, just the hum of the fridge and the soft creak of the chair as I sat down. Outside, the city kept moving. A car passed every now and then, tires hissing on the wet street. My neighbors were home lights in their windows, glowing faint through the drizzle. It was a normal night, but the silence felt different. The next morning, there were more messages waiting. 12 missed calls from Ryan, 4 voicemails from Mom, a text from Dad that just said, "This has gone far enough," and 1 message from Ellie. She said she was sorry, that she hadn't known I was related to them, that she'd turned in her resignation that morning. She said, "You were never the problem." They were. I read it once and left it at that. Around noon, another message from Ryan came through. He said he understood things had gotten a little out of hand, but that Ellie really needed her internship, that she respected me, and that maybe if I asked her to stay, she'd reconsider. I stood at the kitchen counter with the phone in my hand. 1 word from me, and I could undo the damage for them. Not for Ellie, not for me, just for the picture they were still trying to salvage. They hadn't apologized. They hadn't asked how I was. They didn't even seem to realize what they'd done. They just needed me to clean it up. Again. I typed back slowly. "She left because of who you were, not because of who I am." Then I set the phone down and logged in for my weekly team meeting. It was a short one. We reviewed progress on the site redesign and set new timelines for 2 upcoming panels. One of the interns pitched an idea for a feature on overlooked women in journalism history. I told her I liked it, told her I'd help shape it into something solid. My voice didn't shake once. Later that night, I got one last message from Dad. It was short, just a few lines. "You're taking this too far. We raised you. You owe us more than this." I read it slowly, let the words settle. Then I replied, "I don't owe anyone who made me feel less than." And I sent it. No punctuation, no edits, just what needed to be said. A week passed. No calls, no new texts. No one followed up. It was quiet the way things are after a storm moves through. You expect another gust, another flash, but sometimes it's just done. I didn't block anyone, didn't change my number. I didn't leave the group chat or make a public statement. I just didn't answer anymore. I focused on work. We launched a new mentorship series and partnered with a nonprofit that helps single mothers return to the workforce. I met a few friends for dinner one night. We talked about movies, someone's kitchen remodel, and where to get the best tea in the city. No one asked about my family. I didn't bring them up. The quiet didn't feel heavy. It felt open. Then one afternoon, I pulled into my driveway and saw them, my parents, standing on the porch with 2 overnight bags. I parked the car and stayed seated for a moment. They didn't wave. They just stood there like they were waiting for a door to open. I didn't slam it. I opened it. Inside, we sat in the living room. I offered tea. They said yes. We didn't speak right away. My mom was the first to start. Hannah. She said, "We've been thinking, maybe we didn't handle things the right way." She glanced at my dad. He nodded once. "We're still family," he said, "and family helps each other. We made sacrifices too over the years. All we're asking for is a little support. Not forever, just maybe $2,000 a month." The number hung there for a moment. Not shouted, not begged, just placed on the table like it was a normal ask. I nodded once. Then I said, "What about Ryan? Will he be contributing the same amount?" They looked at each other. My mom said softly, "Ryan's in a tough spot right now. With Ellie leaving, he's not in a great place." Of course. I looked at them both, calm and steady. Then I said, "If Ryan agrees to the same amount, I'll do it. No more, no less." The room stayed still. Then I added, "Or if you want me to cover the full amount, I'll need it in writing. A legal agreement, something that states the house will be transferred to me. No surprises later." My dad's face tightened. "You want us to sign contracts now? We're your parents." I didn't raise my voice. "For 34 years, being your daughter has meant giving with no boundaries. I'm just setting some." They didn't answer right away. The silence returned, but it didn't rattle me this time. Eventually, my dad stood. He looked at me hard. "If you care more about money than your family, maybe you're not part of this family at all." I stood too. Then maybe I finally understand what that really means. I opened the door. This time they were the ones who walked out. The door closed quietly behind them. I didn't lock it. I just stood there for a moment, one hand still resting on the frame. The air in the house felt different, cooler somehow, not in a bad way, just still, like something had finally settled after years of rattling around. I went back into the kitchen, put the kettle on, and made tea without thinking much about it. It was habit by now, a slow way to keep my hands busy while my thoughts caught up. I didn't replay the conversation. I didn't need to. Every word was still right there, clear and intact. The tone of my dad's voice, the pause before my mom said Ryan wasn't in a good place, the look they shared when I asked about equal contributions. I sat by the window with the mug cupped in both hands. It was late afternoon, and the light outside had that faded look it gets in early fall, golden, but soft. I didn't turn on any lights, just watched the way the shadows shifted across the room as the sun moved lower. It had been just over a year since I'd sent that final message to my father. The one where I told him I didn't owe anyone who made me feel small. After that, nothing. No birthday messages, no holiday cards. Not even a note when one of my articles got picked up by a major outlet. I hadn't blocked them, I just stopped answering. And for the first time in my life, silence felt safe. I'd always been the one to reach out, to patch things up, to make excuses. Even when I was a kid, if someone in the family got upset, I'd be the one folding laundry or setting the table or asking if anyone needed anything just to keep the air light. I don't know where that started. Maybe it was just how things were. Ryan was the star. I was the support. It wasn't spoken, but it was always clear. After that final visit, I didn't talk about them much. Not at work, not with friends. Most people assumed I was close with my family. I'd learned how to nod through those conversations, offer vague comments that didn't invite questions. Yeah, we talk sometimes. Or, it's been a quiet year. At the office, things kept moving. We expanded our mentorship program, hired a part-time editor. One of our interns got a fellowship with a major news network, and the whole team went out to lunch to celebrate. I ordered a slice of pie that day, not because I wanted dessert, but because I wanted to mark the moment. It felt like we were doing something real, something that mattered. Ellie never came back. After she resigned, she sent a brief message thanking me for the opportunity. She didn't mention the party. She didn't say anything about Ryan. I didn't need her to. She'd seen enough. I didn't hold it against her. She'd been placed in the middle of something she didn't ask for, and when she realized where she stood, she stepped away. Over time, the quiet between me and my parents stopped feeling like a pause. It became the new rhythm. No one followed up, no one apologized. And I didn't chase them down. Instead, I started saying yes to other things. A friend invited me to a weekend retreat up the coast. I went. Another asked if I'd help her daughter with a college application, personal statement, resume, the works. I said yes. We met twice at a coffee shop near my place. She got into her first choice school. I started keeping my Saturdays open. Not out of obligation, just space. Some mornings I read for 2 hours without checking my phone. Other days I walked through the neighborhood farmer's market and didn't feel the need to rush back. I framed a photo for my office, a candid, from one of our team off-sites. We were standing on a hill, everyone's smiling wind in our faces. I'd been standing in the middle, not behind anyone, not off to the side. I added a quote above my desk, too, one I'd found in a book months earlier but hadn't really felt until now. You are not hard to love. You're just not meant to be loved by people who only know how to need. I printed it out on regular paper, slid it into a frame, and set it where I'd see it every morning. The house stayed quiet, but it didn't feel empty. I started answering calls from friends more often. Started saying, yes, come by, even when the kitchen wasn't spotless or the laundry wasn't folded. One night a coworker dropped off soup when I mentioned I had a cold. She didn't stay. Just left it on the porch with a sticky note that said, rest. We've got things covered. I hadn't expected that, but I remembered it. The space I'd given myself by stepping away, by not going back, it had started to fill on its own, with people who didn't expect me to prove anything, who didn't need me to be smaller so someone else could shine. One evening, I stood by the kitchen sink with a towel in hand and looked out at the porch where my parents had stood a year earlier. Nothing about the house had changed, but it didn't feel the same. I didn't feel the same. It started with a knock, not a loud one, just 2 quick taps on the front door early on a Sunday morning. I was still in my robe holding a mug of coffee, standing barefoot in the kitchen when I heard it. I wasn't expecting anyone. I looked through the peephole and saw Aunt Marianne standing on the porch with a bag over her shoulder and a manila folder in her hand. I opened the door. "Morning," she said, like we'd just run into each other at the grocery store. "Can I come in for a minute?" I stepped aside and nodded. She walked in like she'd done it 100 times before, though it had been years since she'd last visited. She set the folder down on the coffee table and eased into the same chair my dad had stood in the year before. "I know I should have called," she said, looking down at her hands, "but I didn't want to give you a reason to say no." I sat across from her waiting. She took a breath. "Your mother asked me to talk to you. She's not sure how to reach you anymore." I didn't say anything. "She's not doing well," she added. "Health-wise, emotionally, none of it's great. Your dad won't admit it, but it's gotten harder lately. Finances, too." She tapped the folder lightly with her fingers. "They're trying to sell the house." That part made me sit up a little straighter. Why, I asked. "They're behind on the mortgage, missed payments. I don't know the full details, but they thought maybe you'd consider helping, just for a little while." She paused as if giving me space to jump in. "I didn't. They said they reached out." She continued. "Said you didn't respond." I nodded once. "That's true." Her eyes softened. "Hannah, they don't know how to say what they should, but I know they're scared." I looked at the folder, then back at her. "Is this from them?" She hesitated, then nodded. "They asked me to bring it. Some paperwork, budget estimates, rough numbers. And a letter. From your mom." I reached over and picked it up. The folder was heavier than it looked. Inside were copies of utility bills, property tax statements, and an envelope with my name written in my mother's handwriting. I didn't open it, not right away. "They're not asking for charity," Marianne said. "They just don't have anyone else." I closed the folder. That was true last year, too. But they weren't asking then. They were expecting. She didn't argue. She just nodded and stood. I told them I'd pass it along. That's all. I walked her to the door. She turned back once before leaving. "They never understood how much you were holding together, but I do." That was all she said before heading down the steps. I left the folder on the table for 2 days. I didn't touch it, didn't move it, just let it sit there like a guest that hadn't been invited. On the 3rd night, I opened the envelope. It wasn't long. 3 paragraphs and my mom's voice formal, careful, almost distant. She said she regretted how things unfolded, said she missed me, said she didn't know how to fix it, but hoped I'd remember what family meant. At the bottom, a single line stood out. "If you're willing to help us through this transition, we'd be grateful. No apology, no mention of the birthday, no acknowledgement of the things that led us here. Just that word, transition." I stared at it for a while. That weekend I went through my files. I pulled out old copies of the bank statements, the ones from when I'd been covering their bills, and added up the totals again. I looked at my own finances, the business account, the home budget. Then I sat down and wrote a short reply. It was a simple message. If Ryan agrees to contribute the same monthly amount, I'll assist. No more, no less. I sent it to Marianne, asking her to forward it to my parents. 3 days later, I got a reply. From my father. He said Ryan was in a difficult season, that he was still between jobs, that Ellie's departure had hit him harder than expected. The message was polite, but the subtext was clear. Ryan wasn't contributing. They were hoping I'd take it on alone. So I sent one more message. If I'm to cover everything, I'll need a notarized document transferring the house title to me in full. No delays, no conditions. The reply came within an hour. "You're making us sign contracts. We're your family." I didn't answer that one. But the next day I got a call. My father's voice was sharp but steady. "If you care more about paperwork than your parents, maybe we were wrong to raise you the way we did." I listened to him finish. Then I said calmly, "Maybe I finally learned what that really means." I didn't say goodbye. I ended the call and sat quietly in the living room, watching the sun shift across the hardwood floor. There wasn't a storm afterward. No more calls, no follow-ups, just quiet. The days that followed were still. No calls, no messages, No more folders passed through hands. It was the kind of silence that didn't feel angry, just empty, like a room that had finally been cleared after years of clutter. I kept working. We launched a new partnership with a local women's leadership network, hosted a virtual panel with 3 state legislators, and wrapped production on a documentary short about small-town journalism. My days were full, focused. But every now and then, between emails and calendar invites, I'd glance at my phone just once to confirm nothing had come through. On a Thursday afternoon, I stepped out to grab lunch. It had rained earlier, so the sidewalks were streaked with damp leaves. I took the long way back to the office, stopping by a bakery I used to walk past but never entered. They had a tray of warm scones by the register, and I picked up 2. One for now, one for later. When I got back to my desk, there was a message from HR waiting. Ellie had officially declined her exit interview. No notes, no forwarding information, just a final date of record and a digital signature. I read it once, then closed the screen. Later that evening, just before shutting down for the day, I got another message, this time from a colleague in another department. "You might want to take a look at this," it said. Attached was a forwarded email thread. It had started with a vague inquiry from Ryan sent to the general inbox on our company website. He'd used a different last name, not ours, but the message was familiar. Requesting consideration for internship placement, recently exploring media opportunities, strong writing skills, quick learner. It wasn't addressed to anyone specific, no resume attached, just a name and a 3-line description. The same way I used to write his job applications. He hadn't mentioned me, hadn't even listed a reference. I sat with that for a while. Then I closed the email and didn't reply. The next week we had our quarterly staff meeting. Everyone gathered in the main conference room in person and on Zoom. We reviewed numbers, highlighted a few new projects, shared some personal updates. One of our team members announced she was expecting. Another had just closed on her first home. I offered a quiet congratulations, smiled when appropriate, and made note of upcoming deadlines. At the end of the meeting, as people were starting to pack up, one of the junior editors came over. "Hey," she said, "I know this is random, but did you used to go by another last name?" I looked at her curious. "No." "Why?" She hesitated, then pulled out her phone. "There's this guy on LinkedIn. Same hometown, similar age range. He's been messaging some of us. Said he's your brother." She handed me the screen. It was Ryan. New profile picture. New version of his story. He had reworded everything listed, a made-up media project, padded with buzzwords he didn't understand. He'd even claimed to be collaborating with local political voices, something he'd never shown interest in before. "He keeps hinting that you two are close," the editor added, "that you'd vouch for him. Just thought you should know." I handed the phone back. "Thanks," I said. "I'll take care of it." That night I drafted one email, addressed directly to him. I didn't ask why he was doing it. I didn't ask what he hoped to gain. I just said, "Please remove my name from your outreach. I won't be providing a referral." I didn't send it right away. I let it sit in drafts overnight. Read it once in the morning, then pressed send without changing a word. He replied within an hour, "You're really going to do this to me, after everything I've been through." That was all it said. No subject line, no signature. I didn't respond. Instead, I updated my team. I let them know they were free to disregard any messages bearing my name as a reference, that if anyone had questions, they could reach out to me directly. Then I turned my phone off for the rest of the day. It had taken over a year, but I'd stopped wondering what they might say next. I no longer flinched at every unknown number or felt pulled toward every family update that trickled in through someone else. They hadn't changed, but I had. I no longer felt responsible for patching things up. No longer felt the urge to smooth over what had been broken. And as the days went on, I realized something else. What they wanted wasn't me. It was access, reputation, the sense that I could still be leaned on even after the door had closed. But I had already walked away. It was a Tuesday when I got the call. I was coming out of a meeting, keys in one hand, phone in the other, balancing a notepad under my arm. The screen lit up with a number I hadn't saved, but I recognized the area code. I didn't answer. Let it go to voicemail. It rang again less than a minute later, same number, same silence, when I let it ring out. By the time I got back to my car, there were 3 missed calls and a new message. This one was from my mother's number. "Hannah," she said, her voice low and careful. "Your father and we were wondering if you might have a few minutes. We'd like to stop by. Just to talk. No mention of money. No mention of Ryan. Just that." I didn't respond right away. I let the message sit for a few days, checking it once or twice to hear the tone again. She sounded tired. A little rehearsed, but softer than I remembered. That Saturday they showed up. I hadn't invited them, but they came anyway. My father in his usual windbreaker, shoulders tight. My mother holding a tote bag like it was something to hide behind. I opened the door without saying much, stepped aside, and watched them walk in. We sat in the living room. They didn't ask for tea, didn't ask how I was. They just sat. After a minute, my mother started. "We wanted to say, things haven't been easy for any of us." I nodded, not saying anything. She continued, "We've been thinking about everything, about the past few years. Maybe we didn't see how much you were doing. Maybe we should have asked." My father cleared his throat. "We made mistakes, sure, but we're still family." I kept my eyes on them, waiting. "We're not asking for anything this time," he added. "Not money. Not paperwork. Just a reset. Maybe we can start again." They weren't angry. They weren't demanding. But they also weren't apologizing, not in the way that mattered. I sat back in the chair and let the quiet fill the space between us. Then I asked, "Is Ryan part of this reset?" They both paused. "He's doing his best," my mother said quickly. "It's been a rough stretch." My father looked down, then back at me. "He's still your brother." I nodded once, then stood, walked to my desk. I didn't say anything. I just picked up a folder I'd kept tucked away since the last time they asked for help. Inside was a breakdown of every utility bill, every auto payment, every amount I'd covered, without being asked, without being thanked. I handed it to my father. He opened it, looked at the first few pages, then passed it to my mother. Her face shifted, not in shock, but in realization. "You were paying all of this." I nodded. "For 2 years." She didn't say anything, just closed the folder and set it on the table. My father leaned forward. "Why didn't you say something?" I looked at him and said, "Because no one ever asked." It was the first time in that conversation either of them really stopped talking. My mother picked up the folder again, held it against her chest, and looked around the room as if seeing it for the first time. We didn't know she whispered. We should have. He sat back quiet. They didn't ask me to forgive them. They didn't cry or beg. They didn't make a scene. They just sat there finally still with nothing else to say. I walked them to the door. My mother turned before stepping outside. "Will you come for Thanksgiving?" she asked. I looked at her for a long time. Then I said, "Not this year." She nodded slowly. "Okay." They walked down the steps, got in the car, drove away. I closed the door and stood there for a while, the hallway quiet, the house steady. Later that evening, I lit a candle in the kitchen and sat at the table with a cup of tea. My phone buzzed once, a short message from Ellie. "I hope you're doing well. Just wanted to say I found a new role, one that feels right." I typed back, "I'm glad to hear that." Then I turned off the phone, slid it across the table, and let the quiet return. The holidays came and went quietly that year. I didn't decorate the house, didn't travel. I made a simple dinner, lit a candle in the window, and spent the evening with a book I'd been meaning to finish. No messages came through, no invitations, just stillness. And it didn't feel lonely. It felt earned. In January, we brought on 2 new interns. One of them reminded me of myself at that age, quiet, observant, always listening before speaking. I caught her staying late a few times, straightening chairs after meetings, organizing things no one asked her to. One afternoon, I walked over and said, "You don't have to fix everything to be seen." She looked surprised, then nodded. I didn't say more. I didn't need to. Spring arrived slowly, rain then light. I planted herbs on the back porch, started walking again in the mornings, not far, just enough to breathe before the day began. I passed neighbors, waved at the same man who walked his golden retriever every Tuesday and Thursday. Nothing big had changed, but everything felt different. Lighter. I never blocked my family's numbers, never shut the door all the way. I just stopped stepping through it first. They didn't follow, and I didn't chase. In time, the calls faded, the requests disappeared. What was left was silence. But this time, it didn't ache. It made space. That space filled in quiet ways. Coworkers who showed up when deadlines got heavy. Friends who remembered my birthday without a Facebook reminder. People who didn't expect anything from me, who liked me just as I was, not for what I could offer. I still have that quote above my desk. The one I printed during the first quiet season. "You are not hard to love. You're just not meant to be loved by people who only know how to need." Some days I read it without thinking. Other days it still stops me, not because it hurts, but because it reminds me. For a long time I believed being good meant being useful, that if I stayed quiet, gave enough, kept the peace, eventually someone would see me. It took years to realize they already had. They just never wanted to look closer. But I did. I saw myself more clearly the day I stopped proving and started protecting, not out of anger, but out of clarity. If you're listening to this and wondering whether it's okay to walk away from the people who only reach out when they need something, let me say this, it is. You are allowed to stop showing up for those who never showed up for you. You are not cold. You are not ungrateful. You are simply done. And done is a beautiful place to begin. If this story found you at the right time, feel free to share it or leave a comment and tell me what it stirred in you. And if no one has told you this in a while, let me be the first. You are enough exactly as you are. Take care of yourself. You deserve it.